Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, House Bill 475 should be a familiar bill to many people in this body. It has been on this floor before in 2020 and has been heard in the interim by the Local Government Committee, as well as also being heard in the Elections Constitutional Amendments Committee, both in 2020 and again this year. There are only minor changes from the very original version of this bill that was filed in 2020. We all know that our revenue options for our local governments are currently restricted by language in Section 181 of the 1891 Constitution. Those restrictions say that local governments, cities and counties, can only tax property, license fees, and franchise fees. That's a tax on productivity and a tax on the property in those jurisdictions. And those are the only things that can be taxed. Those restrictions make Kentucky one of only 17 states that have local income taxes and has made us one of the 5 most reliant states in the nation on those local income taxes, giving us a competitive disadvantage when we try to recruit businesses and people to our state. These restrictions have been talked about in the General Assembly for well over 2 decades, probably closer to 2.5 or 3 decades. But there's never been any real movement. I have a report from the 1996-97 interim where it specifically talked about the number one recommendation of a special committee to look at city and county taxation was that we needed statutory and constitutional change to open up options for our local governments. If we want to move away from our over-reliance on taxing productivity, passing this constitutional amendment is the necessary first step. If passed, the bill would allow the General Assembly to come back in a future session and create a framework where other revenue options could be discussed, including consumption-based or sales taxes. I think many of us in this body are focused on competitiveness. Others in this body are focused on the revenue that's needed to grow our economy and to grow our cities and counties with the current and modern services that our constituents demand. Passing House Bill 475 will give us the opportunity to work on both of those issues in future General Assemblies and allow us to compete in a modern global economy. As I said, the bill has just a few small changes since the 2020 bill that we had that actually had the same number, and those small changes are just this. We specify that if sometime in the future there is a sales tax enacted at the local level, that it must follow the base that the state follows and be collected and administered substantially similar to the way that the state tax is administered. We want to put that in there to provide clarity and consistency across the board for our local governments and for our businesses that would be paying the tax. There is a House Floor Amendment 1 that I would like the clerk to report at this time.
Mr. Clerk, please report.
House Floor Amendment 1 to House Bill 475.
Gentleman from Edmondson.
House Floor Amendment 1 is simply a technical correction with the wording related to franchise fees to make sure that everything stays in accordance with some court cases from a couple of years ago. And again, just a very minor technical correction related to franchise fees. There be no questions about the floor amendment, I would move passage of House Floor Amendment 1 to House Bill 475.
Motions for the adoption of House Floor Amendment 1. Is there any debate or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. House Floor Amendment 1 is adopted. Gentleman from Edmondson.
As I get ready to move passage, I would further say that I am proud that this bill is bipartisan. We have, I think, 35 or 36 Republican co-sponsors on the bill. We have 5 Democratic co-sponsors, and I appreciate everyone's sponsorship and support of this bill. Be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have at this point, but if not, I would move passage of House Bill 475 as amended by House Floor Amendment 1.